This is your review video for the Unit 4 Summative. In this video, we will go over the 10 vocabulary terms for Unit 4, algebraic expressions, solving equations, distributive property, and additive inverse.
This is going to be so much fun!
One of your vocab words is variable. Remember that a variable is just a
letter that stands for a number.
Remember that additive inverse are just opposites. So it's those two numbers that when you add them together, they cancel each other out and equal 0. An algebraic expression is different from an equation. The clue that I want you to look for is an equation always has an equal sign. An equivalent just means two things that are equal. Then you have some properties. The distributive property, the clue that I want you to look for, it involves multiplying parentheses. And then you have your addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, properties of equality, and you should match those up with the correct operation that they show. The addition property of equality says that you can add the same things to two sides that are already equal. The subtraction problem talks about subtracting, and then the same thing goes for multiplying and dividing.
Algebraic expression.
One of the keys to remember is that algebraic expressions do not have equal signs. So for the first one, you need to write an algebraic expression. You want to go look for the operation that you are working with, and sum means add. So I know I'm going to add two things. Remember, you go look for the word and that splits up the two things you are adding. Well, you are adding 6 on the left side and b on the right side. So that expression is 6 plus b. The next problem asks you to write an expression to show the relationship between boys and girls. So you want to compare the girls' information to the boys. And if you look on all of these, to go from girls to boys, you add 5 each time. It doesn't matter what the girls is, you add 5 to get the boys. So, like I said, it doesn't matter what girls is, I'm going to call it G. I would add 5 to it to figure out the boys. If you wanted to talk about it the other way, you could talk about boys. To go from boys to girls, you are subtracting 5 each time, but since you are starting with the boys and then subtracting 5 to get girls, then you would say B minus 5. Both of those would work because it shows you the relationship between boys and girls. And finally, it says write 2 equivalent expressions for 5 Snickers and 2 Butterfingers. Remember, they want you to use 2 different operations. So the fastest way to show 5 Snickers would be 5 times S, because S is used for Snickers, and 2, so plus 2 Butterfingers, B for Butterfingers. Or this is like the cashier at the checkout lane. You might have someone who types it in faster by multiplying, or you might have someone that adds up each one individually. So you would take a Snickers plus a Snickers plus a Snickers plus a Snickers and then plus a Butterfinger and plus another Butterfinger. Both of those are equivalent expressions.
This is so awesome!
This test asks you to write and solve several equations. One example I'm going to use on this video is that 6 bags of Takis cost $30.48. It wants you to write and solve an equation to determine the cost of each bag. Well, you know you're getting 6 bags, so whatever the cost is, you would multiply it by 6. So I am going to say that 6 times my cost of the Takis is equal to $30.48. Well, I want to know how much each Takis cost. So I would, to get that t by itself, I would divide both sides by 6. Now you're dividing decimals, so all you have to do is go off to the side and solve that using the decimal rules that you know from elementary school. When you divide, you're going to bring your decimal up. 6 can't go into 30, but it can, or sorry, it can't go into 3, but it can go into 30 5 times. And you're going to subtract, and you're going to bring down the 4, and 6 can't go into 4, so you're going to put a 0 up on top, and you're going to drop the 8. And then 6 goes into 48 8 times. So I know that's hard to see. I know that answer is hard to see, but you get 5.08 over here, and the 6 would have canceled, so you have t is equal to 508, and we're talking about money, so you can put that money sign on there. So that means that each bag of Takis cost $5.08. The next two equations, remember, when you solve equations, you want to try to isolate the variable by using the inverse operation, working backwards, following the golden rule of equations, which is whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So I am going to try to get this variable x all by itself. Remember, you have to get rid of numbers least attached to the variable. So first I want to get rid of 4. Since I'm adding 4, I need to do the opposite on both sides. So I'm going to subtract 4. This one cancels out, and I still have negative 3x. And you can draw that line down the center if it helps. All it does is mean the equal sign. Negative 23 minus 4, that means that it's 23 degrees below 0, and it drops another 4 degrees, which would give you a temperature of negative 27. Now, you still need x by itself, so you would divide both sides by negative 3. This cancels out, so you get x is equal to 9, because 27 divided by 3 is 9. And when you divide two negatives, your answer is positive. The second example, 1.5 is equal to, that's a division sign in there, p divided by 4 minus 1.3. Again, you work backwards using the opposite operation, getting rid of numbers least attached to the variable. You need to undo this 1.3 first. You are subtracting it in the problem, so you would want to add that on both sides. When you add decimals, you need to make sure that your decimals are lined up. So then you would do 5.3, or 5 plus 3, I'm sorry, drop your decimal, and then 1.1 is 2. Over here, your minus 1.3 and plus 1.3 cancel. So you still have p over 4, which means p divided by 4. Now, to undo that 4, you do the opposite. The opposite of dividing by 4 is multiplying by 4. And as long as you multiply both sides by 4, everything stays equivalent. So dividing by 4 and multiplying by 4 cancel out. So you have p. And over here, 8 times 4 is 32. You carry the 3. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 is 11, and you have one number after the decimal, so you move your answer back one place. And there is your solution.
Next is additive inverse. Remember, additive inverse means opposites.
Additive inverse are two numbers that when you add them together, that it equals 0. So if I'm talking about the number 3, the additive inverse or the opposite is negative 3. And when you add those together, you should get a sum of 0. And of course, you have to draw pictures. If you draw a picture of 3, you get 3 positives. If you draw a picture of 3 negatives, you get 3 negatives. And when you put positives and negatives together, they cancel out and give you 0.
This is fun. Don't get bored.
And last is the distributive property. Remember, the distributive property is the process of multiplying a number by everything inside of parentheses. So we are going to start with 5 times the quantity s plus 6. So you take 5 and you multiply it by the first term. So 5 times s is 5s. And then you take 5 times a positive 6, which is a positive 30. So that is 5s plus 30. The second example, negative 2 times the quantity 6r plus 8. So I'm going to take my negative 2 and multiply it by 6r. Negative 2 times 6r is negative 12r. And then I'm going to take negative 2 and multiply it by a negative 8, which is negative 16. You can also keep your addition sign there, and you could do negative 2 times 6, which is negative 12r. Keep your addition sign, and then say that negative 2 times 8 is negative 16, because those answers are in fact the same thing.
Listen up, people. Good luck on your test.